Welcome. This is the Whitman Finance Committee meeting, Tuesday, May 26th, 2020. It's 7 o'clock. We are broadcasting virtually on the Zoom platform. And we'll just do a quick roll call. Everyone is present except for Scott, who apparently said he may come in or may not. So everyone else is present. Meeting minutes, we have Samantha provided in advance the meeting minutes from May 5th and May 12th, and also April 14th. There were some requests. We put that on, we tabled those meeting minutes, and Samantha did some additional information on that. Everybody got all the meeting minutes by email?
Also, I also sent 421, but I didn't see that distributed.
Which one did you send?
421. I did 414, 421, 55, and 512, but I didn't see 421 go out.
Okay, I apologize. I did not see 421, so we'll have to hold off on that one. Sorry about that, Samantha.
That's okay.
Thank you for getting all of those meeting minutes. I know that's quite a lot of work. So, reserve fund right now stands at $30,314. Public forum information. Our public forum is temporarily suspended due to the COVID-19 limitations. I made a suggestion that perhaps if people want to contact me that have questions on anything that we talk about in the Finance Committee, they are more than welcome to call me at my house. My home phone number is listed in the telephone book if anybody still has one of those, 781-447-4366. And you can email me at randerson@whitman/mass.gov, ma.gov. That's the email address for Whitman government. So under new business, we have Whitman-Hanson Regional High School budget assessment discussion. We have a line item transfer request from the Whitman Police Department. We'll touch on our media outreach. Under old business, we have a standing subcommittee reports from the Building Facilities Capital Expenditure Committee and the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee. Also under old business, review the annual town meeting warrant and vote recommendations. And if time allows, we'll delve into Article 2 within the town meeting warrant. We do have 2 communications and upcoming meetings. Just a reminder that we're not meeting next week. We are posted for June 9th is our next meeting. And then we have a June 16th also available for the final disposition of our recommendations to town meeting.
When do we need to have Article 2 completed so that it can get printed in the warrant?
Right, they don't need much time at all.
Okay.
So the calendar annual town meeting is June 22nd, 2020, as it stands right now. So that's a summary of the agenda. If the meeting wants, we will move to the meeting minutes. So we have before you 3 meeting minutes. We'll start with the one that's the most distant past, April 14th. Everybody have a copy?
Yes.
Okay. So Samantha in her email stated that she went back to the recordings to make modifications as requested by Rosemary. Paragraph 2 on page 1 is where the added information begins. So, so everybody can see on the first page. Did everybody have a chance to review the information? Does anybody need additional time? Raise your hand if you need any time to look at the previous minutes. Al, you were actually absent for this meeting, so you will probably have to abstain from the vote anyway. So it's totally up to you.
Fair enough, Rick.
So, but again, if you had questions, you know, anybody certainly can have questions. So on page 1, as it stands, are there any amendments, questions, or deletions? Rosemary, did you have a chance to look at the way it was rewritten? Okay. Page 2. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Just the names at the top I don't know anyone named Todd Stout. I'm guessing that it was Todd Hassett, the Hanson Town accountant.
I just took what Randy said off the recording.
Okay,
So
Oh,
I don't know.
is this, oh, on page 2 at the top, I see.
very
So
first,
Todd Stout, yeah, I don't know who that is, tell you the truth.
I
But it
can
may
ta-
be a representative from Mars, right?
I can take, it could be, I can take that out. But I took that, that's what Randy said, so I put it in.
If that's what he said, just leave it there and he can correct it in a further meeting.
Okay,
You know,
Okay.
I'm all right with that. Kathleen, you all right with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, anything else on page 2? All right, moving to page 3. This is the meeting where, if you recall, we started our action on questioning line items from Article 2, which most likely we'll have to rescind to start again, questioning line items when we get to that. But as far as the page of the previous minutes, any questions or comments? Moving to the final page, more question line items, and then the votes on the unquestioned line items were then taken. Meeting adjourned at 6:40. Motion Chuck and second Ralph. Anything on that page?
No, looks good.
Okay, so we'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of April 14 as amended.
Kathleen makes the motion to accept.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call vote to accept the meeting minutes from April 14th, 2020. John?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Rosemary?
yes,
Kathleen?
Yes,
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
I vote yes, and Al?
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay, very good, thank you very much. Moving on to the next set of meeting minutes. May 5th, 2020, it was the joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen. Did everybody have an opportunity to review this page? The only issue that I think may come to play with these meeting minutes is it refers to the meeting minutes of the Board of Selectmen. And I checked the page today, the website for the town, and the meeting minutes from May 5th are not yet posted. So I would suggest that we table these meeting minutes until the meeting minutes from the Board of Selectmen can be distributed and then become part of this document as an attachment. Samantha, is that possible?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't want to contradict anything that was displayed in their minutes.
Sure. It's only made the meeting minutes easier to make as well.
Well, that too, but
No, so if you could, then when the meeting minutes from the Board of Selectmen get posted, could you just forward a copy to the committee?
yes,
And
of
then
course.
okay, and then we could take these off the table and debate whether or not the meeting minutes are complete with the with
Yes.
the additional information from the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, that's fine.
Is that amenable to anybody? Everybody? Any other problem?
Yeah,
with
that's
that?
fine.
Okay. All right, so we'll put that one on the table and we will pick up the meeting minutes from May 12th. The only person that was absent is Scott for this particular meeting, the May 12th, 2020 meeting. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. And
So,
anybody have any questions or corrections on the first page of the May 12th meeting minutes?
Yeah, I picked up something there.
Okay,
I think it's about line 13 or so down when it talks about Ms. Conley stated that both towns have less than 1,800 students. Therefore, I believe it should say de-regionalizing,
yes.
not regionalizing.
I need to make a correction. It's under 3,000 students. It's between 1,500 and 3,000. That was I misspoke. Do you want to keep those in the minutes, or actually, I pulled up the information, but what I was told was under 3,000 children, we lose our benefit of scale. So I don't know if you want to change that to 3,000, but I guess
Well,
I didn't say that.
I don't think we want to change what you said.
That's true. What I said was right in the middle of those
Right.
two numbers, so.
Okay, so the only amendment that I can see then is Chuck's mention about the deregionalizing, changing the word. You got it?
Yep.
Okay. Rosemary, you good with the first page now, still? Okay. Anybody else, page 1?
Nope.
All right, moving on to page 2. Seeing none, we'll move on to page 3.
Hold on, I got one on page 2,
sorry.
Rick.
Go ahead.
About 16 down, it was talking about the bond. If you reach in, there have been any details from Mr. Tuffy regarding the Whitman Middle School feasibility. Mr. Lynham stated that it would be it says ban, but I believe it should be bond, B-O-N-D.
Yeah, it actually is a ban.
It is a
Oh,
bit.
it is?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's,
my
it's an
mistake.
acronym, so you could capitalize the letters that to maybe erase any confusion.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, thanks.
I don't know what it stands for.
It's bond against note, I think.
There you go.
What?
Bond against
Todd
note.
told us last week.
Okay, gonna capitalize that. Anything else on the second page of the meeting minutes from May the 12th? Okay, moving on to the third page. Anybody have anything they wanted to add or detract from that third page? Okay, and the final page, page 4. And the meeting adjourned at 8:22. A motion to adjourn by Kathleen, seconded by Rosemary. Anything on that? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes of May 12th as amended.
I'll make that motion.
Kathleen makes the motion.
Okay, I'll second.
Kathleen and Ralph, motion and second. Further discussion? Roll call, all in favor. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes, sir.
Ralph?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, thank you very much for getting through those meeting minutes. We'll move on to our listed agenda item for the Whitman-Hanson budget assessment. So where we left this last time was that we are in a listening phase with regard to the proposal for the assessment. As far as I know, the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District School Committee has not met since our last meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does anybody have anything they would like to add to the discussion regarding the proposal of the assessment? Kathleen?
Just very briefly, I listened to last Friday night's Hanson Board of Selectmen meeting where they have voted to put an $800,000 override on the ballot. They won't be having town meeting till July, but the ballot will be sometime in late June, and it was worded specifically for the schools. So that is a movement that they've made. And the other thing I'm concerned about is Christine Lynch's memo to school officials where she states if the two towns approve the amended memorandum, so the amended 50-50 method of apportioning the costs, but do not approve the budget, then the fiscal 21 budget will be apportioned based on the 50-50 split. So I think we're still in let's wait and see mode. I'm not in any hurry to show our hand to the other side. Let them make the next move.
Okay, Rosemary?
Kathy sent an email today, I think, and the amounts that we were reporting going over to Hanson were different because they had lowered the amount. I think it was closer to 500,000, not the 200,000. Is that correct, Kathy?
Well, it's banter. People are talking about, oh, yay, the superintendent has reduced the budget by $600,000 with E&D and savings from fiscal 20. But anyway you cut it, we're talking about if it's a 50-50 split, it's going to cost Whitman voters $570,000 because the full cost of implementing the statutory method is $1,140,000. So yes, our assessment has gone down by 60% of the 600,000 that the superintendent has cut. $570,000 of Hanson's full statutory costs.
Definitely something to consider as we get all these facts. Go ahead,
Can you
Rosemary.
repeat that? I don't know if Kathy's audio cut out and it was echoing the same
Yeah.
thing over here. Can you
I don't
repeat?
think we missed anything. I think we just heard. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try it again. If we go with the 50-50 compromise method that the superintendent has proposed, the cost to Whitman is $570,000, not the $211,000 that people have been saying. The $211,000 is just based on the bottom line savings by the superintendent cutting $600,000 from the assessments. And 60% of that comes to us, so that's $360,000, and 40% goes to Hanson. But that does not reduce the cost of going 50-50. It still is $570,000 that Whitman taxpayers will be paying for the 50-50 method of assessment.
John, your hand went up. Did you want to add?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to comment. The reason why that is 570 is because the amount for our statutory method was reduced with the amount that the school invested into its own budget. So instead of the statutory method in our budget, in our line being around 15.1, it's now been reduced to a little under 14.8. So basically, we've just gone from an assessment of 5.3% increase or so from last year to a 2.8% increase. So basically, we've been if the will of the committee is to go with the statutory method, then we can actually alter our Article 2 and reduce almost $359,000 and still stay with the alternate method. So that's why it's still 570, because our statutory method has been reduced by almost 360,000 by the new budget now that the schools have implemented.
Right. Go ahead, Rosemary.
So the schools get less overall. So this, when we didn't cut back, the schools cut back for kids to compromise, but it's still the same. The amounts that money that would be paying extra and over, and that amount of state aid that we get that is not going to be recognized.
Correct.
Is exactly almost $500,000.
Correct.
So you said,
So let's be clear, because I think that we play with numbers enough, and
Yeah, all I'm saying is the statutory method with the
kids get less.
because they invested $600,000 of their own district money, they've reduced our assessment now. But if we are using the statutory method, so instead of it's still a $55 million budget. Nothing's changed for them. The only difference is they're using $600,000 of their own money, so that's been reduced for us. So if we use the statutory method, we can now reduce our Article 2 from 15.1 down to a little under 14.8. So we saved $359,000 because the district invested their own money into the budget. So
Has anybody questioned what that consequence of putting that money into the budget and not keeping it in there? in other accounts. Has there been any answers to what?
That's the
Well,
school
like-
committee. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Kathleen.
No, I was just going to say, that's for the school committee to decide. And if they elect to support the superintendent's recommendation to use 350,000 in E&D and 250,000 from fiscal 20 savings, then that's their job, not ours.
Right, but I think it's important to note that they cut they use their E&D money for the benefit of Hanson at the expense of the kids. You said they cut the expenses for the kids, but no, it really does equate to Whitman paying a larger share of the assessment if we do not use the statutory method.
Correct.
So,
That's
Correct.
correct. That's correct. But if we do use the statutory method, it's reducing the amount that Whitman will need to pay in Article 2 by $360,000. So if we, so I just want that, when we go and decide on that line, when we do go through Article 2, we should reduce that from 15.1 down to 14,796,475, because that's what the statutory method would be based on the certified assessment by the school district.
and the budget that was passed at their
The
last
budget
meeting.
that was passed, correct.
Right. Okay. All right. So anybody else have anything else they want to add? I mean, like I said, we're still in the listening phase. I think that was a good suggestion last week. Yeah, the information will be considered by the Board of Selectmen at their meeting tonight as well. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that meeting as far as the 4-1 vote that the Board of Selectmen made on their last meeting to support only the statutory method. Let's see what comes out of the Selectmen meeting tonight, and we'll continue the discussion.
I'd like to make one comment. Somebody is trying to enter the meeting with the name of owner. I don't know who it is. When Scott comes in, usually he comes in under Scott. So if anybody gets a text, say they're waiting to get in, can you let me know? Because I probably won't let this person in because I don't know who it is. Or if you want, I can let him in and quickly remove him if we think it's somebody
Yeah.
trying to cause a trouble.
I'd go for the entertainment value of that decision.
Okay, all right.
Don't
So
let
I'm
him-
about,
don't let him
I'm
in.
about to let him in. We'll see who it is.
Don't let him in.
Don't let him in or do?
No,
It's
Al,
not
come
Scott.
There's a virus.
It's not Frank. It's
it
not.
is.
Could it be a virus, John? No.
It wouldn't be a virus, no, but it could be somebody who got it. I don't know who would have been able to get a hold of the link.
CNN.
CNN, you think? So it's up to you. Do I let him in or not? If
All right. Are there anyone other than Al that's opposed to letting this person in?
As
Okay.
long as we boot them out if we don't like who they are.
John, you're pretty quick with the buttons, right?
I'll be as quickly as I can. Here we go.
All right.
How much
Here we
those
go.
guys some money?
Owner.
Welcome, visitor under the name of owner. Could you identify yourself, please?
Looks like they're muted.
Hold on. All right, I'm going to remove them since they're not identifying themselves.
Okay.
There they are, gone. All right, John, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on to the next item under new business. It's a line item transfer. Did everybody get an opportunity to get the information that I sent forwarded from Tracy Briggs, the administrative assistant for the Whitman Police Department? So this is a request for a year-end transfer. The following line item transfers are made pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 33B. From line item 121, part-time records clerk, the amount of $4,645.20, to line item 120, which is clerical, the same amount. And the explanation is that the previous administrative assistant retired and vacation time had to be paid out of this line, which left the line short for the remainder of the fiscal year. For backup, they did provide the balance as of 5/16 being at 1,326. Total funds needed for the year was $5,971.20, leaving the balance that is requested. And for the part-time record clerk, the balance as of 5/16 is $7,531.29, and the total funds needed for the rest of the year is $2,404.71, leaving a surplus with 31 days left of $5,126.58. John?
Rick, did you get an opportunity to talk with Frank on this today at all?
I
In your
did
brief-
not, actually. I had very limited amount of time to sit with Frank. He's getting ready for a selectmen's meeting as well, so. So this is a line item transfer. Typically, there's not a lot of negotiation with a line item that is insufficiently funded to make it to the end of the year. If someone does have reservations, we could certainly table it until I can get additional information. Chuck?
Yeah, I just, I have a question. They started the new policy supposedly this year. Is that amount the correct amount that somebody should be retiring with? Is it over? And I thought we had a new line in Article 2, 244 for retiring vacation pay. So I was just wondering, does the amount of this fall in line with policy on what somebody's allowed to retire with?
Well, I can say one of the policies is the fact that when calculations are made for requirements in salary lines, every expectation for retiring individuals should be made and the amount should be adjusted accordingly. So it seems unusual to have a $4,600 deficit, knowing that this person was clearly planning to retire this year. So like I said, it's the will of the body. If you want to take
Yeah, I don't really, I just, you know me from the past, seeing all the money that we've spent out,
right.
whether it, and supposedly there's a new policy. And I when we get to Article 2, I'm going to question 244 because there's a huge amount of money in there. I just don't know. I just don't feel confident that the policy is being followed on the limited amount of vacation time people are supposed to retire with now.
Right. Well, I can tell you by the dollar figure, it's nowhere near like the $70,000 windfall that we had to approve on several occasions. So I would say that based on the amount, this is probably within the new policy guidelines of how many days of vacation you can accrue and carry on into either next year or retirement. But as I said, I don't know for sure what that
All right.
dollar amount would be.
Yeah, well, I'm comfortable with your answer, Rick. And I'll save line 244 for when we get to it.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
because it is a small amount, it's nothing like it was. I just, like I said, with the past history, with Frank, telling me things weren't going to happen and slowly making policies evolve, and then do they get
Right.
followed? I just don't know. But I'm good with your answer.
So one of the other aspects that you have to consider as well is these two lines are within one department. So it's not unusual for a department head to allocate funds to balance out their own budget. It's no less different than when a budget manager comes into our meeting initially and makes a request for his yearly budget and then allocates as they see fit. This is almost like a microcosm of that process, where at the end of the year, they find that one line item requires money from another one of their own.
Yeah,
line.
correct. Yeah, it's not a reserve fund transfer.
If it was a reserve fund transfer, I would probably agree that we would get
All right.
more information than less. Yeah.
All right, that's good. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thanks, Chuck. Good question. Anybody else? Any discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the line item transfer as presented.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Okay,
second
motion-
it.
All right, motion by Chuck, second by Rosemary. Further discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes, sir.
Ralph?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, thank you very much. We'll put that. The Board of Selectmen will also be likely voting on this line item transfer tonight at their meeting as well. Okay, our next item is the media outreach. Just to give you an update on the emails that I got, several of them from the editor of the Whitman Express. The first one came in this morning, was a little disappointing when I guess she was assembling the article for publication. She stated that she could not include the letter and the tables due to limitations of publishing space. So the letter itself was 3 times more than they would normally allow to be published in one edition. And so she offered to include a link that the readers of the newspaper could then access to get the tables that relate to the article. So a little difficult, you know, and I tell her that we would probably, well, I was disappointed that the article couldn't be published as it was intended by this committee. But, you know, the choice is theirs. It's, you know, their limitations are what they are for publishing. So as an alternative, we had a little roundtable discussion earlier about making the information available to anyone who would be watching our finance committee meeting. And then they would be able to access all of the information in one place, inclusive of the tables. So if we could indulge on John to put the information up as a screenshot. Kathleen can perhaps give a little summary of each page.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Mhm.
That's it, correct?
Okay.
Is that it?
I don't see anything. Okay.
There it is. Okay.
All right. So, as Rick said, it is disappointing that the editor isn't able to accommodate both the tables, which have the numbers, and the narrative. And since the narrative will be published, I'm going to skip over most of it, try to summarize it. But the purpose of this guest column that our chair has submitted to the Whitman Hanson Express is to put forward Whitman's defense of what, to sort of counterbalance all of the nonsensical arguments that are out there that are not founded in fact. Because we're talking about money that is created or generated by a law, the 1993 Education Reform Act, which comes up with a formula for calculating Chapter 70 aid. And so in part 1 of this narrative, I do go through the 3 steps or the 3 components of the Chapter 70 aid calculation. The foundation budget, which is based on the pupils in a specific community, Whitman's pupils and Hanson's pupils, so they're 2 separate calculations, and how much it would cost to provide an adequate education for the students in that given town. So that's our foundation budget. The state then uses information from the Department of Revenue to come up with what they call the minimum local contribution. So it is based on the so-called aggregate wealth, which is the value of property plus the income that the residents of the town report to the Department of Revenue. So that's the minimum local contribution. That's the amount that each community is expected to pay, the minimum each community is expected to pay towards its school budget. And then the Chapter 70 aid, which the state distributes, is simply calculated by subtracting the minimum local contribution from the foundation budget. And that's where Chapter 78 comes from. And so there's a Chapter 78 figure for Whitman, and there is a separate Chapter 78 figure for Hanson. And anyone who wants to check these numbers can go to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education website. Year after year, the calculations are spelled out in black and white. These are not numbers we're making up. Everything came from the DESE website. So if we could move to the next page, which gives the table, because the problem that we're facing in fiscal 21 is that finally someone figured out how to calculate the assessments to Whitman and to Hanson using the statutory method of calculation, which is the law. And there is a provision that allows regional school committees to use what is called the alternative assessment method. For us, it would be the per pupil calculation. And that's the method that has been historically used by the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District to calculate the town's assessments. Unfortunately for us, in 2007, DESE, the Board of Education, and through them, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, decided that the regional school districts needed some advice on how to adopt the statutory method. So if you take a look at the numbers in Table 1, it's the fiscal 20 operating budget, the budget that we're just finishing this year. And so we have a $52,373,023 certified fiscal 20 budget. The total Chapter 78 is $24,776,700. There are other costs and revenues that come into the town: circuit breaker, charter school reimbursement, tuitions, and the like. And you come up with $24,069,126. That is the net school spending. The two ways that that 24 million plus can be allocated to the two schools in the region are either the statutory method, which is the default method, or the alternative assessment method, which is the one that's been used historically. So if we stick with the statutory method, you take the net school spending, you subtract Hanson's minimum local contribution and Whitman's minimum local contribution, which have been calculated by DESE, and you come up with a balance of $4,545,187 that is above the minimum. So Whitman and Hanson, the school department last year, decided to fund above minimum, which most communities do. That's where the per pupil population percentages get applied to the budget. So Hanson should pay 40% of that budget, $1,000,008. Whitman should pay 59.8%, or $2.7 million. And then you add the minimum local contribution plus the per pupil above minimum contribution to get a total assessment to Hanson of $10,718,657 and a total assessment to Whitman of $13,350,469. And that would have been our fiscal 20 operating assessment had the statutory method been applied last year. Unfortunately, it was not, even though it requires a vote of the school committee an affirmative vote of the school committee to adopt any method other than statutory. There was no vote taken. The per pupil percentage method was used. Hanson's assessment was $9,000,006. Whitman's assessment was $14,000,009. And the difference was a shift of $1,041,825 that Hanson did not pay and Whitman did. So that's a significant dollar figure. And that's fiscal 20. So now, finally, someone in Whitman, a rookie school committee member, actually did the math and shared it with her colleagues early in fiscal 21 during the budget session, really to confirm that she understood what she was doing. And she's an accountant, so she probably had a leg up on a lot of people on that committee. But the assessment method in the budget became the big impasse, where as soon as the Hanson representatives realized that there was going to be over a $1 million shift from Whitman to Hanson by following the statutory method, people crossed their arms and said, we're not doing anything until we come up with a compromise. So if we could move to the next page, it talks about the steps that need to be taken for a regional school committee to follow any method other than statutory. And in 2017 and 18, the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee was impaneled by the school committee to update the regional agreement. And a huge change to the agreement was Section 5 that spells out the method used to calculate each town's assessment. There was a half-hour PowerPoint presentation to the members of that Regional Agreement Amendment Committee from Mars, where they walked step by step the process of calculating the budget by the statutory method. That method was voted unanimously by the school committee in April of 2018. There was no more wording about per pupil assessment. Not one person objected to it. And so clearly there was a misunderstanding on how to do the math. But if you take a look at what's happening, they never followed, they being the school committee, never followed the steps needed to adopt an alternative method since 2007, and no one ever calculated what the statutory implications were. The reason that this has become a big problem gets us into part 3, the history of Chapter 78. And I did go on the DESE website and actually had to contact a fellow at DESE to send me the links to anything prior to 2015 because those were archived. But these are numbers from DESE that show the Chapter 78 to Whitman and to Hanson, so by town. In 2007, Hanson received $10,374,000. Whitman received $12,005,000. The total state aid in 2007 to the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District was $22,380,000. I'm not going to read all 15, 17 lines of this. If you scroll down to 2021, Hanson is now being awarded $6,972,000 in state aid, Chapter 78. Whitman is at $13,301,000. So the bottom line is Hanson has lost $3.4 million in Chapter 78. Hanson has an increase of almost $1.3 million, and it's the loss of Chapter 78 by Hanson that, and I'm not blaming Hanson, people weren't paying attention to the numbers, but that is, in my opinion, the crux of the problem, that the Chapter 78 that was identified as going to Hanson has dropped by 3.4 million, and the Chapter 78 that is apportioned to Whitman has gone up by 1.3. And there is a hold harmless clause in Chapter 70 that prevents any school district from receiving significantly less money from one fiscal year to the next. So if you look at this third column, the $4.6 million, that's hold harmless. That isn't Whitman's money and it's not Hanson's money. It's Whitman-Hanson Regional School District's money to prevent us from moving further and further into a deficit situation.
Wow.
So that's the history. And it's a huge, it's 13 years, 14 years of what happened over time. So if we take a look at Table 3, this just goes back over the past 6 fiscal years. And it shows what actually has happened from fiscal 2015 to fiscal 2020, our current operating budget this year. And in the first 2 columns, so I give you the percent enrollment by pupil. And in the next 2 columns, it's the actual assessment that was approved at town meeting using the so-called agreement method. And then the next 2 columns, so at the top 2020, Hanson is 9.6 million, Whitman is 14.4 million. That's what we actually paid in fiscal 20. Had the statutory method been used, Hanson would have paid 10.7 million, Whitman would have paid 13.3 million, and the shift is $1,049,000. And it's just getting worse. If you take a look all the way down to 2015, the shift was only $374,000. So it's not getting better. Next year it's 400,000, 600,000, 700, 900,000. We're now over $1 million. We can't let this go on. It's only getting worse. It's not getting better. And so we're at the budget impasse, and I think the problem is that the rhetoric out there is not based on fact. And I'm a numbers person, so if the numbers told a story that indicated that Hanson was not in a deficit situation with Chapter 78, I tell that story. So I didn't massage these numbers. These come right from DESI, and anyone is welcome to take a look at these numbers and portray them in whatever way they want. This is not an editorializing situation. This is, here are the facts, here are the numbers. We're talking millions of dollars. And so as far as the budget impasse is concerned, the school committee voted unanimously to use the statutory method. It took a few years for them to figure out what the statutory method actually involved. It certainly has opened up a hornet's nest, as people were advised, just let's not go there, let's just keep doing what we're doing because it's going to cause so much of a rift between the two towns, which is true. But as a Whitman Finance Committee member, I can't sit silently and pretend that these numbers aren't important for us to know about. And so I have concerns that there is a method for Hanson to have challenged their assessments. Instead of saying, Whitman, we want you to pay half our assessment, they could have appealed it. There is a statute in there, or there is a part in the law of Chapter 70, Section 6A, that allows for a town to request a recalculation of their minimum local contribution. And to this date, Hanson has not pursued that route. Instead, they've refused to, or they've recently negotiated with, I guess, this 50-50 proposal. But at this stage of the game, it's called the compromise. But these are the numbers that people need to have access to in order to stop the lies that some people are telling. And that's all you can call it, is a lie, because these are the true facts from DESI, not imaginary numbers that people would like us to ignore. And so if people will please read the letter that Rick has submitted to the Whitman-Hanson Whitman-Hanson Express this Thursday, and the Whitman-Hanson Express will provide links to these three tables. I know it's a lot of numbers, and if you're not a numbers person, what you can do is be grateful that there are people who do pay attention to the numbers and are trying to protect your best interests by doing what's right by you. And at the end of the day, I'll editorialize just a little bit here. I don't want this to be a Pyrrhic victory where Whitman celebrates and Hanson hangs its head. We're talking about the education of 3,800 children. And that education takes money. It costs money to educate them. But let's do it in a way that everybody knows what is above board, and that the Hanson's Chapter 78 is going to be historically a problem if they don't start to try to negotiate something with the state. Meanwhile, the statutory method is the only method that is approved by the state unless both towns agree to adopt something other than that. I hope that was a short enough story for people to follow.
Kathleen, that was extraordinarily concise and
Great.
clear. I think it definitely is going to be an eye-opener to a lot of people, and I really appreciate you taking the time to walk the taxpayers through that. So thank you once again.
You're welcome all.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. And one thing I thought was important that you is that Hanson can ask for a recalculation or appeal, and that's something I've just recently heard. So I think that's important for them to know. I hope they do know that.
They do now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
excellent. Anybody else on the media outreach? Go ahead, Dave.
So just one, if you give this a quick answer on the reason why the state has increased or decreases a town's Chapter 7 money. It's my understanding, basically it comes down to the ability of a town to contribute to education. So if the ability is lesser, the town gives more. If the ability is more, the town gives less. Is that a quick answer to that?
That is exactly right, Dave. They use Department of Revenue figures for the value of the property and per capita income to calculate what each town can afford to pay.
So when we look at those tables and we see one going up, one going down, that's giving an indication of the what's the word I'm looking for? The ability or inability of a town to pay.
Exactly.
Wealth-based, right? Isn't that the key word is wealth-based formula, right?
It's an aggregate wealth
Aggregate
formula.
wealth, aggregate wealth.
Yep, excellent. All right, good questions. All right, thank you all for that. We'll move to the subcommittee reports. Dave, your subcommittee's meeting Thursday?
Correct. We didn't meet last Thursday, but yes, we're meeting this Thursday.
Okay. And the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee has not scheduled anything. I have heard nothing from the committee chair about a scheduled meeting. So that brings us back to where we left off in the town warrant. Everybody have for annual town meeting, the warrant where we left off was on Article 14.
Is everybody seeing that?
Yeah, we see that.
Yes. Yes, thanks,
So-
John.
So we agreed to, yeah, it was Article 13, I think we approved, though I didn't color code it, to purchase the motorcycle using the motor vehicle fine. So
Yep.
we're on the police cruiser.
Right. But can we go to the actual warrant copy to consider
Oh, I'm
the,
sorry. Yeah, that's correct. That's what you like better. Hold on. Everybody see that? All right, and let me
Yeah,
get to the
good.
right, let me get to the right page.
page 5?
There we go.
So we did make some progress last week.
Mhm.
Let's see if we can probably be able to get to the end and perhaps take when I had the time to sit with Frank today, I did ask him some of the questions that came up. And I also, Lisa forwarded some information regarding one of the other questions on another article. So we could take the time at the conclusion of us getting to the end of the warrant and go back to take a look at other articles. We won't have an opportunity for Frank and Lisa to attend our meeting until the June 9th meeting because, well, the June 9th meeting, selectmen are meeting as well. So it'll actually be the June 16th meeting will be the next opportunity to have the town administrator and assistant town administrator in our meeting. For tonight's meeting, the assistant town administrator did commit to having both meetings up. So if somebody had a question, they could actually use the, is there a format, John, where a question could be asked in the chat?
I mean, not cross meetings, no. So if they're listening to our meeting, then they can hear us, but we cannot hear them.
Right, but Lisa could chat an answer if we had a question regarding,
She could text it, you mean? She can't
Yeah.
chat. She can't chat in our meeting unless she joins our meeting. And
I
since
see what
she's
you're saying.
and since she's joined the other meeting, she I don't know how, I don't see her here. So
Okay.
I don't know how they're listening to our meeting unless that was her that we kicked out. That might have been her.
Okay.
out.
That could have been it.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, because she said she was going to use a different device.
Oh, all
Maybe.
right. So that's why I was asking if anybody, so we kicked her out
Sorry.
and now she can't come back in. So
Oh, she's banished.
she is banished. Once I lay the hammer down, there's no coming back in.
I apologize. That was totally on me. So I just
All right.
thought of that. Okay, so let's move to, if we're ready to get right back into Article 14. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $63,000 from free cash to purchase a marked police cruiser or take any other action relative thereto. This article was proposed by the Chief of Police, and the Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Expenditure Committee did recommend this article. So I'll entertain a motion for Article 14.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Okay, so, John,
I have-
Kathleen, go ahead.
Are we talking about funding source or simply the amount in the article?
Whatever funding source is listed on this
So
is the how we're going to vote the article. So if
this one,
this one is free cash.
this wasn't moved to motor vehicle fine accounts?
Yeah, I
There's
thought
not-
we moved this.
No, there's not enough money in motor vehicle fines to fund $63,000. The four articles I talked about doing that would have been Article 13, Article 15, Article 16, and Article 17. And when we get to 15, 16, and 17, I intend to make the motion to change that funding source if we can.
Okay, thank you, John.
Further discussion. John, can you tell me how I make my screen so I can see all the participants? I can only see 5 at a time.
If you might see in the top left-hand corner, kind of like a grid pattern in the very top corner of your window, and you may only have two select the two. It's like a single bar, a bigger bar, 2 bars, and then a grid of 9. You
Got
click
it.
Grid of 9.
Yep, got it. Grid of 9. Thank you very much. Now I can
Okay.
do a roll call, so
Right.
you can only see half of the time. Okay, thank you. So we'll move to vote. John. We are now voting on the recommendation. John.
Yes.
Al.
Al ran away.
Don't see him there. We'll move to
Al.
Ralph.
Yes.
Rosemary.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Chuck.
Yes.
Al, are you there? Huh. Oh,
There he is.
coming in. Al, we're a roll call vote for Article 14. Right now, we
I'm here.
have 7
Yes.
yeses, and we now have 8, and I vote yes. So,
Yes, Rick, sorry.
That's okay. Recommendation for Article 14, 8-0. Article 15. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $9,231 from free cash to purchase 6 tasers for use by the police department or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the chief of police.
I would like to make a motion to change that funding source from free cash to the motor vehicle fine account.
Second that.
Okay, so just in that vein, Frank, in our discussion today, said that the funding source for Article 13 was free cash, and we voted to make it from motor vehicle fine account. It really doesn't matter, to tell you the truth. The dollar figures are going to add up, and we are going to deplete all of the money in the motor vehicle fine account when we have concluded with the articles of the warrant. So I guess if you have done the calculations, John, we'll defer to your.
Well, my
funding-
concern is that if we do not use up the motor vehicle fine account, that money will go to free cash at the end of the fiscal year. However, we will wait until it's certified sometime in October for it to be available to us. So why are we gonna, if we have police items here, which is, from the motor vehicle fine account, that's what it has traditionally been for, why are we using up free cash and then tying up $41,000 of the motor vehicle fine account? And that doesn't even include May and June's revenues. So right now there's about $41,000 in the motor vehicle fine account. We will add to that May's revenue as well as June's revenue before it's closed out. So, why take $41,000 from free cash when we can use it the motor vehicle fine account and not tie that up for 3 months until it's certified?
All right, does everybody understand the funding source recommendations from John? I'm going to defer to you because you have done an extensive amount of work on that revenue forecasting as well as the deciding from the accounts to allocate for each article. So the amended article then will read on Article 15 from the motor vehicle fine account. Further discussion? We'll take a roll call vote. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes, and I agree with John's thought process.
Okay, very good. Rosemary?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, so 8-0 for Article 15. MVFA. Article 16. Want to scroll down a little, John?
Oh, sorry.
All right. I have it in front of me as well, so just for our people at home. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $2,980.02 from free cash to purchase 6 shotguns to upgrade current police department armament or take any other action relative thereto. It's proposed by the chief of police.
I would like to make a motion to change that funding source from free cash to the motor vehicle fine account.
I'll second that, Chuck.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to amend the funding source from free cash to motor vehicle fine account. Further discussion on Article 16. Well, first we'll have to vote on the amendment. So, John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the article is amended for consideration, for recommendation. Any further discussion now as the amended article? We will now vote to recommend Article 16 as amended. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes, sir.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck? Chuck is running down the stairs, but I think he said yes on the way. Rosemary?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So Article 16, 8-0 as amended. Article 17, under the heading of technology, to see if the town will transfer $10,000 from free cash to purchase a new centralized voice recorder for the police and fire department or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Director of Technology, the Police Chief, and the Fire Chief. The Buildings, Facilities, and Capital Expenditure Committee did recommend this article. I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to change the funding source from free cash to the motor vehicle fine account.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion and a second to amend the funding source. Further discussion on the amendment? Oh, we'll take a roll call vote. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes, sir.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck? Rosemary? Chuck, you're muted.
Yes.
I read your lips.
Yes.
Okay, so I vote yes as well. So was that the amendment or was that the motion?
That was the amendment.
Okay, so we have amended Article 17. Further discussion on the merits of Article 17 for recommendation at town meeting. Seeing none, I'll take a roll call vote. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So Article 17 is recommended by the Finance Committee 8-0 as amended. Article 18, to see if the town will appropriate $29,980 from free cash to license and implement software for electronic permitting or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Director of Technology and the Building Commissioner. And the Capital Committee does recommend this article as well. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Kathleen seconds.
We have a motion and a second to recommend Article 18. Further discussion? Roll call vote. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes,
And I vote yes as well. Article 18 is recommended by the Finance Committee 8-0. The next group of articles are capital articles. Article 19. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $132,745 from free cash to purchase and equip a 2020 35,000-pound gross vehicle weight truck, cab, and chassis with snowplow, or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Board of Public Works Commissioners, and the Capital Committee does recommend this article. I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Okay, Al seconds. Who makes the motion?
I'll make the
Kathleen.
motion.
Okay.
Or Kathleen. I'll let you have
We have
one,
a second?
Kathleen.
We have a
Thanks.
second and a motion to accept and recommend Article 19. Further
Wait,
discussion?
who made the motion?
Kathleen.
Okay, and Al seconded.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, Kathleen.
That's okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, we'll move to roll call. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes. Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Dave? Yes. Chuck?
Yes.
Rosemary?
yes,
And I vote yes. Article 19 is recommended 8-0. Article, that was 19. Article 20. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $355,055 in available Chapter 90 funds for the purpose of resurfacing and/or installing surface treatments, install sidewalks, and paint lines on various town streets, or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Board of Public Works Commissioners, and the Capital Committee does recommend this article. I'll entertain a motion.
Kathleen will move it.
Okay,
I'll second it.
we have a motion and a second. Further discussion regarding this article? Okay, we'll move to roll call. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes, sir.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Rosemary? You're muted, but I'll take a yes.
yes,
Okay, and I vote yes as well. Okay, Article 20 has been recommended. Article 21. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $100,000 from free cash for the purpose of resurfacing and/or installing surface treatments and line painting to streets on various town streets, or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Board of Public Works Commissioners, and the Capital Expenditure Committee does recommend this article. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the
Kathleen
motion.
moved it.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
Okay, I move.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this article?
I have some questions on Chapter 90. I feel like we're 2 years back when I started asking about Chapter 70 money.
Okay,
I have some questions on how long it's been since we've actually registered roads. These, are we collecting enough? Are we registering the roads so that we can collect enough Chapter 90 money? And would that have covered what we have to now fund? So I'm going to actually, I'd like to hear a little bit more. I'm sure we need this year, but I think
So
there's some issues we need to look into.
Well,
so registering the roads, what do you mean by that?
It looks like there are a lot of roads that have been built in Whitman, and when I look on the DESI website, not the DESI website, excuse me, on the DOR website, it doesn't look like we've registered a road in some time, and we don't get Chapter 90 money for roads we don't register there. So I'm wondering what the miles are that we haven't registered. I think at least 5 years we haven't registered roads, and it might be more. So I just need to know what's going on with that, and if we're
Okay.
missing on state funds, or what's the reasoning? I have some questions. So,
All right,
Rick-
so
Rick-
would a call to the DPW
Ava
superintendent?
McCauley has not called me back,
Okay,
so I should shoot
All
him an
right.
email.
I will send an email tomorrow if the board would like. Go ahead, Al. Al,
Rich, just a
you're up.
couple of questions. As far
I
as
mean,
private
probably
roads,
need-
with the
Go ahead,
private,
Al.
with the private roads that are in town, in the recent development over the past 5 years, are they still private? I mean, the development that we've had going on right now. it
Well,
seems
that's
like-
Rosemary's question. She
Yeah,
wants to
but
know if the streets have been
Aaron,
accepted.
Right. My same question is they sometimes I won't name developers, but the developers will go in there with the town road and they pull back and say, hey, look, let's go private roads cheaper.
Right.
Thoughts?
And then they have problems and expect the town to help them out, so.
Correct. And actually, they're servicing the roads now, Rick. So that's my concern right there. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I think the questions are something that can be sent an email to Bruce and see if we can get some follow
I
up.
talked to him one-on-one and he didn't really have any information, and now, I think I need to have, an email. Maybe that's the best way to do it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Email Bruce. All right, so then I would assume that the committee would like to table this particular article and move to the next. Is that the will of the body? Until
Yeah,
we
well,
get some-
I think we should table it until we get that information. Not that we won't vote it, but I think those are good questions.
very
I don't think that, they're gonna need this money either way. We didn't collect it, we still need to care for the road. So if you choose to vote it, I'll still vote it in. I still need to know for next year what our plan forward is. Because
Right.
this is $100,000.
So-
There'd probably
so-
be no harm, there'd be no harm in just leaving it there so we don't forget about it. We can always,
Okay.
make sure we get that info,
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good idea. I like that. All right.
So, So Dave,
Hello?
maybe my question to Dave, did the DPW make a presentation to the capital committee regarding the additional expenditure up and above the chapter 90 funds? Because this is taking money out of free cash. And I know if we only use chapter 90 money, we will never get all our roads in the condition that they should be in. So there has to be at some point a commitment from the taxpayers to fund additional paving projects. So sorry, Dave, so back to you. Was there a presentation made regarding that aspect of it?
No, the Capitals Committee did not. I think the better question for those interested in what Rosemary has to say is, what roads remain as non-public roads and why, right? So, Rosemary, you've asked this question to Frank probably 2 or 3 years now in the Finance Committee, and he answers the same way. And the answer is that until the developer satisfies all the requirements that the town has, the town does not accept it as a public way.
Mhm.
So I can only assume that,
So we're
that-
plowing, caring for these roads.
and again, I'm not here defending anyone or be argumentative, but Frank has answered that question as well. And he said, the requirement is to plow the street to allow for emergency access only, a private way, to allow for emergency access only. So in what he had said in the past is that that's typically during a normal storm, one run through. Whether or not the DPW does that or not, I can't answer for that, but I can only answer for what I've heard Frank say over the past 3 years at our meetings.
So
I
I
just
think,
want
go ahead, Chuck
to.
first.
Yeah,
Chuck,
hold
go
on, Rosemary. So I think, I guess the real question is anybody overlooking possible money? I think that's Rosemary's point.
Yeah, which we did.
Right, do we understand how that aid is given out? Whereas we've had some trouble with school assessments and Chapter 70 aid. I think if we get a good answer, are we losing out on possible aid by not doing this? Is there a formula If somebody can present it and say, well, we're not going to get any more money, so be it. But I think it's a good question. I hope we're not losing out on any aid.
Yep.
So
Thank
it's
you.
actually a two-part question too, right? Because Rosemary's point and then Al's point is what are we spending? What beyond the emergency plowing are we spending on roads that haven't been accepted? Is that your part of the question, Al?
It's fair enough to say that situation, Rick.
Okay.
The roads are relatively new. What happens to the drainage systems a few years from now? We've had a few of those issues right now with people complaining, thought they had a public road, and they're not a public road, it's a private way.
Okay.
I just, I'm looking at state information the same way I did when I first said the state, almost 2 years when I said that some of the money was going over to Hanson. I'm always looking for if we're getting the most amount of money from our state, how it's coming in. And when I'm looking at the DOR website, I am seeing a town that has no roads that have been registered in some period of time. Now, if what Frank is saying is that no developer has, either the information is wrong on DOR, and that's fine, I just need somebody to tell me, or that no developer in 5 years has made a road that meets our standards. I mean, I think there's some questions here, you know, that would seem unlikely. So let's take a look.
Very
That's all.
good. Your valid points. And we'll get the information from the DPW superintendent for our next meeting. All right, anything else? Other than that, we'll move on to the next article. Welcome, Lisa Green. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody.
Okay,
Hi,
right
Lisa.
now we're in Article 22. We're going to pass over Article 21 for more information. Article 22 says, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $50,000 from water sewer enterprise retained earnings to conduct a feasibility design study for building and equipping a DPW facility to replace the existing town barn or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Board of Public Works Commissioners, and also the Capital Committee does recommend this article. I'll entertain a motion.
Second,
Kathleen will move.
Okay, Kathleen makes a motion and Rosemary seconds. Further discussion.
I only have one comment in that I honestly don't believe 50,000 is enough money to do that, to do a, to fund that. But I'm not going to question the people who came up with that. But I just want to put that comment on record that I don't think that's enough money for that. Hopefully I'm wrong.
I concur with John's statement. Just to put some background into this article, when it was presented to the BFCC, total project numbers were being thrown around of $4 to $5 million. It has since now grown to 9 million, and some people even think that's a low estimate. So what I know of other projects of this nature is that you need about 8% for a feasibility study to be done. So I agree with John. I think this article is woefully underfunded. So let me say that. John didn't say that. I'll say that. I didn't want to put words in your mouth, sir.
I didn't say woefully.
Okay.
And I also hope that I'm wrong, but I don't think I will be. But
I'll ask.
So,
I'm still in favor of it.
You wanna
But I'm
wait?
not. I'm
so
sorry.
Dave, do you think it should go back to the Capital Committee for reconsideration?
No, because I don't think that'll make any difference. I think that where the information is coming from, that they believe that that's enough money, and hopefully that's true. I'm not going to question. I don't know enough about all of that, and that's what they're comfortable with. The Board of Public Works and the town administrator are comfortable with that number. So who am I to question it other than, if Scott Lambasi was here, he'd probably say the same thing in my opinion. I say, well, let's go ahead and vote it. So at least the money's there for them to attempt to get it for that. I mean, if we don't vote it through and they don't get the money, then we'll never find out.
Yeah, I mean, this project is definitely pretty
It has
far
to be
behind
done.
everything.
It has to be done. There's no question.
Al, you had a question. Go ahead.
No, not a question, just a thought though. It sounds like more than $50,000 plus vehicle would cost $50,000 with the utility bottle and snowplow truck. So I'm not sure if they get that mixed up or not.
No.
Yeah.
No, they did
Well, I mean,
not.
worst case scenario is we'll be looking at a subsequent article next year to supplement the money for this feasibility study. So
Do we want to wait what they
I
got?
I don't think it's a good idea to wait. The article has been recommended by Capital Expenditure Committee, and the
Okay,
fact that this building,
it
the
needs to be
conditions at
done.
the DPW really can't wait for anything,
Right.
really.
Yeah.
You know?
Like I said, I'm still in favor of it. I just hope it's enough money to get it done, because I know how badly that needs to get done.
Is next year the year we want to have money sort of held up, like the same that we have held up for a roof that we couldn't complete? Don't we want to have the right amount in this year right now? If we can get somebody in or something more.
We,
I mean, if we don't do this, if it
Well-
isn't, we don't have enough next year.
the man's coming into our meeting right now that can possibly answer this for us. So I'll give him a second until he gets on board.
And just to be clear, the BFCC, two things that our main objective is to review capital projects to see if they're done. So I think the reason why this was passed unanimously was mostly because it's a project that needs to be done. The funding source and the amount, I think, may be secondary, and or maybe even non-existent in the reasoning for the vote.
Okay, Frank, welcome to the meeting. We are discussing the warrant article. Just nod your head if you can hear me.
Sorry, it took me that long to get here.
That's all right.
You had to walk so far from one meeting to the other.
We appreciate you making the trip.
Yeah,
So what we're voting on is the our article for the design study for building and equipping a DPW facility.
yeah,
And the dollar figure associated with it is $50,000. It's been some discussion, mindful of the fact that the article has been recommended by the Capital Committee and the Board of Public Works Commissioners. There's just a little ongoing concern, I guess, for the amount that is being requested as being adequate.
well, as you'll recall, when we started this journey back when I was a pup, we engaged what we thought was the preeminent firm in the area of that kind of work. And there was no question that that was the group. They do more than anyone else. Unfortunately, they also had a steep design for us that just wasn't palatable to the public. A few months ago, I reached out to Jeff Alberti and said, look, we're still stalled on this. Jeff sent me, and I distributed to the committee, a series of projects that had been done over the last couple of years in the 5 to above $11 million range. And our appetite is certainly going to be more modest than those projects. And they're familiar with us. They have a sense of our resources. And Mr. Alberti feels confident that they will be able to come up with an effective feasibility study and cost recommendations for under the $50,000. And that's why we changed the number from 100 to 50.
I'm good with that.
All right, anybody else? Any further comments, discussion?
No, Rick, it's Al. I got mixed up between 23 and 22. My apologies. I'm in favor of 22, Article 22.
Okay. All right, so that is the article, and we do have a recommendation and a motion and a second. So we will move to roll call. John,
Yes.
Al,
Yes, sir.
Ralph,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So Article 22 is recommended for town meeting 8-0 by the Finance Committee. Moving to Article 23. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $50,685 from free cash to purchase and equip a 2020 Chevrolet K3500 utility body 4x4 truck with snowplow or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Board of Public Works Commissioners, and the Capital Committee does recommend this article. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Al,
Kathleen, second.
and seconded. Further discussion on this article? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call. John,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Article 23 is recommended 8-0 by the Finance Committee. Article 24, 25, and 26 have yet to have recommendations from the Capital Committee. Is that correct, Dave? Those articles are still on your docket for next week?
That's correct, Rich.
Okay. All right. So we'll move to Article 27. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $21,000 from free cash to reconfigure the existing Whitman-Hanson Regional High School guidance and counseling areas or take any other action relative thereto. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Here we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on Article 27. Okay, we'll move to roll call. John,
Yes.
Al,
Yes, sir.
Ralph,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Article 27, 8-0. Article 28 withdrawn. Article 29. To see if the town will vote to approve a one-year collective bargaining agreement between the town and Local 1769, the International Association of Firefighters, AFL-CIO, and to appropriate $59,889 from the Reserve for Appropriation Ambulance Receipts Account, fiscal year 2020 receipts, to fund the cost items of the collective bargaining agreement or take any other action relative thereto. This article is proposed by the Board of Selectmen, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion, John. Do we have a second? Okay, Rosemary, second. Further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to, go ahead, Kathleen.
My question is simply, why is this not part of Article 2?
I
In the
can
fire-
answer that.
Go ahead, Frank.
Because Article 2 funds operations for any department, including salaries. However, a collective bargaining agreement has to be approved by town meeting. So in order to bring it to town meeting, you have to present the contract for approval along with the cost items. So what
Okay, thank
happens is once it's voted, that money will then be allocated to the respective budget lines in that particular budget.
Thank you.
And Frank, additionally, it is a one-time expense, and typically Article 2 is reserved for recurring expenses. So this would be a supplemental one-time expense as an additional answer to the question.
Yes, and then next year it will become a base for negotiations. One of the reasons I joined you tonight is there are some other things that have occurred at the selectmen's meeting that I will share with the group. But this process that we used to approve by article is an alternative to simply funding. It allows town meeting to recognize the cost items associated with a new contract. I can't remember the last time a town meeting actually wanted the gory details of the contract, going back at least 20 years, but they have the right to ask that.
Okay. Further questions on Article 29?
I just like to make a comment. Frank, are those further discussions you're going to have that happen on the Board of Selectmen in regarding to cost of living raises for other departments?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So where this is a cost of living raise for the fire department, the information you're going to give us is regarding cost of living raises for the other departments?
That is correct.
Okay.
So maybe this would be a good time because additionally, this committee could recommend that this also be part of the hold on COLAs, because this is a cost of living increase. The finance committee could actually recommend that this line item not be funded and the COLA would not be applicable for this particular bargaining agreement. I'm not suggesting that in any way that this board would move to that direction, but I think it does give this opportunity to Frank to give the rest of the information about what transpired with regard to the other COLAs at the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Well, I'm trying to pull up a worksheet. File. Let's see. File. Share. Email. Attachment. Bear with me just a second. Like I said, I just came out of the other meeting, and knowing that you were meeting, I thought perhaps I could provide a fairly timely update.
So John, will we be able to pull that document onto the screen?
Frank would be able to once,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'll stop sharing on this document so that when Frank finds it, he can share his own.
Well, it's not a question of finding it. I had to send it to myself. And it is here now, so let me pull it up.
So John, my screen just went to the Zoom screen. I don't know if you did something to me.
I unsaved I unshared the document
Oh, okay, I'm back. Sorry.
so that
I thought I was kicked out.
Yeah,
Frank can share his document.
and as soon as I bring it up, come on. It'd be so much easier if I just use one computer.
Lisa, while Frank is working on that, can I just ask you if you tried to log into our meeting earlier? If you did, I apologize.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that was me.
Oh, boy.
And when you were asking me to identify, I didn't have
You were muted.
microphone, so I was trying to type in the chat, but you disconnected me before I could get everything typed in.
Yep.
No Zoom bombs in my meetings. No
That's
Zoom
right.
bombs in my
It's all my
meetings.
fault.
Not gonna happen.
So I apologize. I know we had a discussion earlier today that you were going to be monitoring, and I had just escaped my mind altogether.
No,
So
that's quite all right, quite all right.
we have a very
Be
tight
safe and
security
sorry.
here, so just so you know.
Night shift.
Well, I mean, if anybody had any questions on the community preservation article.
We
I'm
will
happy
probably
to
return
answer.
to that article so that you
Yep.
can have a, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Would like to definitely hear from you. Frank, you want to come back to this?
Frank,
Yeah,
Frank,
yeah,
you want to email it to me, Frank, and I'll
yeah,
try to.
I'm having trouble opening it right now. It opens to a blank page. Hang on a second. File, send to share.
Just send it to everybody.
Yeah, I can just do FinCom. Send as attachment. FinCom. Oh, lovely. Okay, you should have it. I hear a whole bunch of bings, so I assume you do.
All right, give me a second.
Yeah. It's on my phone, but I couldn't even begin to see it.
Hold on.
Ah.
You see it now? Everybody see
I
it?
can see it now with help.
Okay, so what you have here, I was asked to calculate what the cost would be if COLAs were presented across the board. So if you look to the far right column, or next to the last column, it says the calculation for a 2% increase. Each of those lines are salary lines within the budget that would be impacted. The 164,689 is the cost if every eligible employee were to receive a 2% increase. And that includes the 59,889 that would be attributable to the fire department. The board tonight voted to support a 2% COLA based on their sense and belief that the other employees who are funded through the town, and that would include Whitman Hanson personnel, are receiving increases, and they did not want, and the fire department is slated to receive an increase, and they did not want to leave out any employee in the group, with the expectation that everything starts with a clean slate for fiscal '22, that there are no contracts, there would be nothing on the table until they met and strategized and negotiated. So the selectmen are recommending that these salaries be adjusted to reflect the 2%, and that will appear in the requested column of Article 2.
Okay, Frank, just a quick question. When the selectmen voted to not include COLAs for this budget cycle, what was the justification at the time?
It was my request based on the uncertainty of funds.
Related to the COVID-19 crisis?
Yes.
And so the wisdom of the Board of Selectmen now is that we're not concerned with the economic impact of the COVID-19.
No, I think that's an unfair characterization. The decision of the board reflects their belief that the COLA would not be an undue burden on the town, and the funds are available to support it. And it puts everyone, including the school district, on the same level playing field for contract negotiations going forward. Because everyone will be looking at new contracts in '22.
Okay, understood. Does anybody have any other questions regarding the COLA worksheet?
I do have one question, Frank. Looking at this form, I don't see the employees from the sewer and water enterprise fund on here. They would be included in this as well, so that would be added on to the
Yes,
164.
I just didn't copy below that line, but everyone will be included. I can tell you what that number is if you give me a second. Um,
All right, while he's waiting, Kathleen, you had a question, comment?
Just a statement. I think this is a wise move because I hate to see municipal employees being pitted against each other. And I was extremely uncomfortable that we had one union who had settled their collective bargaining agreement and others who had not. And this gives me a much better sense of fairness when it comes to all of our municipal employees being treated equitably.
And that was the reason for taking this step. Let me just give you the number.
I agree with Kathleen.
as well.
1.2.
You know, I agree with you.
So I think, given that information, while Frank is looking to get the dollar figure for the water sewer department, I think we could now move to recommendation for Article 29. We have a motion and a second. Is that correct for Article 29?
I motioned it.
Okay.
I believe somebody seconded it.
Samantha, do you have a second on this Article 29?
I'll second it.
We have one now, Ralph. Okay. Further discussion on Article 29.
That number is 12,478, by the way.
Thank you.
12,478 on COLAs, right?
In addition to the 164,689.
Correct.
Okay. All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll move to roll call on Article 29. John?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. 8-0 to accept Article 29 for a recommendation. Article 30 is relative to the Cable Access Fund. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $219,322.68 for the Reserve for Appropriation Cable Access Account to fund PEG access services in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53P, or take any other action relative thereto. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
John,
I'll second. Yeah, 3 seconds.
We have a
John,
motion
can
in
you-
3 seconds. Okay. Further discussion. This is a
John,
new,
can John make that motion if he works for the cable?
Oh, good point. I don't
Yeah,
work.
I'll make that.
No,
motion.
thank you, thank you. I'll withdraw my motion. I am on the board of directors, so that is a very good point. And I will also abstain from the vote, I guess I should, huh?
all right. So we have
Thank you, Rosemary.
You're welcome.
a motion from Rosemary and a second from Al and Kathleen to accept Article 30 as presented. Roll call vote. Al?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Kathleen?
Just what is PEG?
Public education and government. So basically,
Thank you.
those are the 3 things that cable access provide for services: programming for the public, programming for education, and programming for government.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so we'll take a roll call vote. Al?
Yes. Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
And John?
I abstain.
And I vote yes. So we have a 7-0-1. Samantha, get that? With John abstaining. Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, moving on page 8 to bylaw additions. So Article 32 does not really need a recommendation from the Finance Committee. Article 33 also,
Hold on, let me get there. Wow.
Yeah, I hope you don't have to read this more than one.
Is there an Article 33? Well,
Mike
that's,
Celia.
that is it, yeah.
Floodplain bylaw.
So that entire thing that you just started scrolling through is the protective zoning bylaw.
Right.
So it continues on the next few pages with the boundaries and the water course alteration, the permitted uses, the permit procedure, followed by definitions. And on page 15, it summarizes the last definitions and does not require a recommendation from the Finance Committee. Article 34 is more or less a placeholder. I'll read it. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer a sum of money to be added to the town capital stabilization account or take any other action relative thereto. This is proposed by the Finance Committee and the town administrator. So this is more or less a placeholder. Frank, you want to describe the process?
Yes, in past town meetings, we've always tried to provide an opportunity for fiscal management at the end of the meeting. By placing these articles for capital stabilization, technology stabilization, and town stabilization, we are able to propose that some of the available funds be placed in any or all of these accounts. One of the reasons that you might look at stabilization as a place to park funds is a town meeting requires a 2/3 vote to spend out of stabilization as opposed to a simple majority elsewhere. The better reason is for better financial planning.
Okay, so these articles will be presented at the end, and a recommendation will be held for action on the town hall floor. Kathleen?
I just have a question regarding the Madden report. Are these three articles anything that the Madden report recommended a certain percentage of the operating budget, or I'm just making that up, but a certain amount of money or percentage of the town's operating budget be approved as a goal?
No, but there are overall goals that we would want to see a stabilization account at somewhere between 5 and 10%.
Mhm.
5 is reasonable, 10% is reaching, but we can get there. But you also have to look at what your planned spending is for the following fiscal year. And you always want to leave some funds in free cash so that if you need a source of funding for an emergency before setting the tax rate, you have a source of funds to work from.
Okay.
And the technology stabilization is something I added years ago when we were trying to build a network. I think it's a good idea for future planning because when you replace backbones, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars as opposed to, an incremental amount of money. So we should start to build that now because in another 5 to 7 years, we will probably be looking at a new core switch and new controls. So we take baby steps, but we get there.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions regarding the last articles that are going to be amended at town meeting? All right, thank you, Frank, for the explanation. And
Rick, can I ask you if any articles other than 22, 3, 7, 9, and 30 were voted?
yes, we're going to go back to the ones that we, hopefully, we're looking for some input from either you or Lisa to get some more information that we could make recommendations for. So we appreciate the fact that you guys are here. I know you must be just about zoomed out, but if you could bear with us for a little bit longer, there are just a few questions that we had. If you could answer, we could then move to recommend the balance of the articles.
Just real quick, Frank, we approved 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, we tabled 21, and you came in on 22. On 15, 16, and 17, we did vote to make the funding source the motor vehicle fine account, as opposed to free cash.
We don't have a lot of money in there. I don't know what those.
The last update I got from Ken was there was 41,000 in there. And those 3 items add up to under that. Those 4 items, the motorcycle, the tasers, the shotgun, and the voice recorder is like 40,000 and change. And with May receipts and June receipts, we should be comfortable in there. I would.
I would plan on seeing a lot in May and June. The other thing, the reason we did not fund tasers through the fine account is the former chief had a real issue with associating tickets with tasing people. But I'm fine with it.
So at some point, we're going to take the balance of whatever's left in the reserve for appropriation ambulance account and the reserve for motor vehicle fine account and transfer the balance. If it doesn't work out to the exact amount, we're going to move the balance to capital stabilization, I would assume.
Correct.
Right.
No,
So
well, it'll go into free cash.
Correct.
Although you could vote actually in those articles, which would be amended on the floor, you could actually vote to take that money,
balance.
transfer it to a stabilization account, as well as letting it flow to free cash.
I just think it sends a better message if we table, if we just take whatever balance is left in both accounts and put them into capital stabilization. It more or less shows that we have a commitment to making sure we're funding future capital projects instead of just floating it back to free cash. I don't know. I guess it's really not a big deal, but that's why when John, I said about, amending the articles, you're looking to spend down all that money, but you're never going to get to zero anyway. So
Right.
Just trying to save the amount of free cash we can. And that was $40,000 that would stay in free cash versus waiting until that amount got certified in October, which, if we had left it there, it would have taken until end of October to get certified as free cash. That's all.
Okay, very good. All right, so if the board will allow, we'll move back into the warrant on page 3 where we tabled Article P8. So Article P8 was the sum of money on budget line 194, snow and ice, to pay for extraordinary unbudgeted costs incurred and to be incurred by connection with the COVID-19 pandemic or take any other action relative thereto. Frank, can you give us a little explanation about the disposition of Article P8?
When we did the original draft for town meeting, I was very concerned about COVID costs and put a warrant article on the warrant to address potentially raising money to cover those costs. It was only a couple of months ago, but it really seems like a lifetime ago. And since that time, a number of things have happened. One, the state has authorized a COVID-19 emergency fund account, which would allow us, if necessary, to amortize COVID-19 costs over 3 years so as not to take a hard cash hit right away. And it would allow us to spend money in anticipation of future funding. The second piece is that the town will now be a participant in fund distribution for COVID-19 through Plymouth County. So we will be identifying those costs and hopefully getting paid by the county for those costs. And thirdly, we really just didn't know what those numbers were going to be. But now we have a process to deal with it. So in all likelihood, this article is just going to be passed over.
Do you think it could be removed from the warrant as opposed to being passed over?
It could be.
If we leave it, that means we really should have a recommendation. If we remove it, then we won't have to act on it. Totally up to you.
You wouldn't have a recommendation unless there's a some certain anyway.
Right. We would have to make the recommendation on town hall floor, right?
But
If there was a dollar figure.
That now. What's the article number?
P8.
Oh, that's why I'm in the wrong section. So what we'll do is we'll withdraw that article.
Okay. Okay, moving then to P10. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $130,741.77 from free cash to pay debt incurred in connection with the purchase of the town's streetlights or take any other action relative thereto, proposed by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, as you know, last year, we borrowed money to pay for streetlights with the expectation that we would be receiving funds to retire that debt over a period of a year and a half. Whenever we borrow money, if it's not a bond, it's a year-to-year note. And as long as we keep renewing the note every year, we have issuance expense and interest. I anticipate that at some point, we're going to recover some money from National Grid, but I have no idea how long that's going to take. At the same time, we currently are going to be receiving within the next 7 to 10 days, a $60,000 check from National Grid to reimburse us for cost reductions that haven't been reflected in our previous bills. My intent in this article is simply to retire the debt and not incur additional charges. Nothing nefarious about it.
Okay.
Each year that we don't do that, we have to reborrow the money. We don't get to borrow for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. We do revenue notes.
I think I'm the one that had the question on this, so that answers my question.
And generally speaking, it's a debt that has to be paid. And that's.
Oh, yeah. It's
all right.
debt on our books.
Okay.
So I get, basically the statement is, it doesn't have to be paid, but if we don't pay it now, we're gonna get charged additional
We're gonna
funds.
roll it and-
You're gonna have interest and additional interest throughout, so might as well pay it off now while we have the available funds to do it, so that we don't incur any additional costs other than the 133.9.
Yeah, just to carry this for the current year, I believe the issuance cost was $1,200 and the interest was, I want to say $2,800. Somewhere, numbers are somewhere around there.
Makes sense.
I remember them off the top of my head, but I do remember going through it with the treasurer and saying, why are we paying so much?
Right.
All right, does anybody have any other questions regarding Article P10? All right, seeing none, we'll move to roll call. John?
Do we need a motion first?
I motion.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion.
I'll
How about a
second it. I'll
All
second
right,
it.
we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, roll call. John?
Yes.
Al?
No.
Ralph?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Abstain.
And I vote yes. So we have a 7-1-1, no, a 6-1-1. Right? Is that correct, Samantha?
1-1.
6-1-1. Al voted no and Rosemary abstained.
Got it.
Thank you. Okay, Article. So then, Article 2, obviously now we'll have an updated Article 2. Frank, you will forward to the committee at your convenience so we actually have 2 weeks before our next meeting. So we'll have a really good amount of time to review all of the Article 2 lines, formulate our questions, and then we will delve into Article 2 at our next meeting.
I do have one question, Frank. When is the last date we can have our recommendations complete on Article 2?
The posting won't affect that. We are able to put recommendations in up to the day we print the warrant.
Okay, which is when? Which will be when?
Assuming we have our town meeting
The 22nd.
the 22nd, I would say it would probably be the 18th.
Okay. So then our 16th meeting then would work. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, bear in mind, there is the potential that we will not have a town meeting on the 22nd. I have been in contact with our state representative and requested special legislation to authorize us to hold a town meeting at the Whitman-Hanson Regional High School. There was a bill pending in May 4th that has not been acted on yet. It's sitting in committee that would allow towns to hold town meetings in nearby venues if they did not have a sufficient size space in their own town. The statute, chapter 39, that governs town meetings says the meeting shall be held within the geographic boundaries of the town. And the high school, unfortunately, is not within the geographic boundaries of the town. So we're working through that. And unless we can come up with a solution that either allows us to do that or we come up with another place to hold the town meeting, we may end up postponing it.
Okay,
There have been other towns that are doing it under tents outside. I guess it's healthier, and I would wonder if we had considered that particular option.
Well, probably the only place I think we could do that would likely be the middle school field. And I'm not sure how far spaced we can do that. You need a 6-foot diameter for every chair. So for every 40 chairs, you need 240 linear feet. Now you can break that up into other configurations, but the bottom line is the space has to be sufficient to allow for whoever's interested in attending. The high school gym would provide us with 300 areas of seating because of the gym floor, the bleachers, and the track that wraps around on the second floor. So all of that space would be available to us. The other thing we also have to be concerned about is weather when you hold it outdoors. So
Communications and voting, communications and technology are also going to be an issue outdoors at the middle school. Power and
Sound.
speakers and being able to vote. You know, I'm assuming the voting devices that we use would probably work outside as long as we had proper, you know. But we'd need microphones for people to speak and all that. I mean, it's
limited distance, and we have to put repeaters throughout the meeting area.
right.
But you'd have cables, people would be tripping over and all kinds of things. We have not really looked at an outdoor meeting. If I could be sure that the number would be small, I wouldn't have an issue with it. But with the school,
It'd be big.
all right, that's a TBD, right?
yep.
Okay, so moving on to Article 4, to see if the town will vote to amend town departmental revolving funds bylaw by adding to Section 5 authorized resolving funds as shown in this accompanying chart. Frank, could you explain this chart?
Sure. Revolving funds are regulated by bylaw that started 2 years ago. So every year, the town has to vote the spending limits for each revolving fund. Unlike the past, when you vote a spending spending limit now, it only means that's how much you can spend. The revolving accounts continue to accrue revenue based on what's paid into it. Any changes to that addition or removal of a revolving account requires another bylaw amendment. So Article 4 amends the bylaw to create a streetlight receipts account. Now that we have the streetlights, we also have a number of lights that are paid for by individuals, either corporations or persons, and we have to have a mechanism for collecting that revenue and for paying the expenses associated with those lights. And that's what this particular account will provide for.
Go ahead, John.
So, do we have a revenue forecast on what that revenue source fund will be, so that we know that it's going to be enough to support the $7,000 spending limit on it?
Well, we do not. The spending limit is 7,000. That doesn't mean we'll spend 7.
No, I
It's
understand,
little as 1,000.
but I'm just curious, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
you know, the
It's
revenue.
not an authorization to spend unless the funds are already there.
Okay.
So when we bill, right now we have, Lisa, do you know, is it 17 lights?
It's, actually, it's 35.
All right.
35.
We have 35 lights that were, and ironically, we shouldn't even have these. National Grid replaced lights that they owned, that they provided under billing to private customers and put our lights in them. So their way of fixing it was simply to turn those lights over to us. I guess there's an advantage to us because it will actually generate revenue over and above what we pay for the lights. So if you figure, I think the average street light, personal street lights were between $17 and $35 per month. It'll be significantly less, but I wanted to be sure that we're in a position to cover the cost of servicing those lights as well as replacing them if there are damages. So the intent in the revolving account was to allow us to bill and to reserve that money in the event that it's needed for replacement. And that's, I guess, the best explanation I can give you for it.
Yeah, I mean, I had the question on it, so that answers my question. Thank you, Frank.
All right, does anybody else have any other questions regarding this Article 4? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to recommend Article 4.
I motion.
Okay, Rosemary
Kathleen
moves,
seconds.
Move, sorry.
Kathleen seconds. Okay, further discussion. Okay, vote, John,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So 8-0 on Article 4. Article 5 has already been acted on. Article 6. To see if the town will accept sections 3 to 7 inclusive of Chapter 44B of the general laws, otherwise known as the Massachusetts Community Preservation Act, by approving a surcharge on real property for the purposes permitted by said act, that the amount of such surcharge on real property shall be 1% of the annual real estate tax levy against real property commencing in fiscal year 2021, and that the town hereby accepts the following exemptions from such surcharge permitted under Section 3E of said act. Property owned and occupied as a domicile by any person who qualified for low-income housing or low or moderate income senior housing in the town as defined in Section 2 of said act, and $100,000 of the value of each taxable parcel of residential real property. The purpose of the act is for the acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of historic resources, the acquisition, creation, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of land for recreational use, the acquisition, creation, preservation, and support of community housing, and the rehabilitation and restoration of such open space and community housing that is acquired or created as provided under said act. To determine whether the town will accept any of the exemptions from such surcharge permitted under Section 3E of said act, or to take any other action relative thereto. So Lisa, I know you did provide some backup documentation, of the questions that were raised about this article. So if you want to give a little summary of what you sent.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So the Community Preservation Act, I know that we've kind of touched on this previously in prior meetings, is basically it's a program that is run by the state that allows communities to set aside and earmark 1% of their property tax to specific projects such as were read in the article. Our recreation space, low-income housing, historic preservation of our historic buildings, and just other projects that this fund is, again, earmarked to pay for, help us pay for. The Community Preservation Act has been in effect since 2000. Any community that adopts this and contributes is guaranteed to receive funds out of the Community Preservation Trust Fund. The Community Preservation Act receives money from the Registry of Deeds. Every single real estate transaction that happens in Whitman and in other communities, there is fees that are deposited into the Community Preservation Act Trust Fund. So even though Whitman has not adopted this, any real estate transaction that happens in the town of Whitman, money is put from those transactions into the fund. So we're contributing, but we can't benefit from that money because we have not adopted the act. There is a website called the Community Preservation Coalition. You can go on that website and there's a lot of information, including data banks that you can look at how much money communities have contributed, how much money they've received from the fund. You can also look at projects that a number of communities have done with this money. They've installed pickleball courts, and just done a number of different things with it. And actually this year, just to give you a little bit of update, what happened in 2019 is that the governor signed legislation that increased the Registry of Deeds fees on the real estate transactions that go into the Community Preservation Trust Fund. And so far to date, for the current year, the money that's gone in there so far is $21,340. Just to give you an idea of last year, 2018, 2019, this time last year, the funds collected were $10,916. So that's double already what they collected for the whole year last year. Now, of course, COVID-19 is going to have a significant impact going forward, the May, June, and possibly July. But come November is when they actually distribute the money to the communities for projects. So come November, we'll get the final amount of what was collected out of the fees. And the governor has set aside, again, signed legislation that sets aside at least $20 million that will go out to communities that have adopted and contribute at least 1% to the fund. And again, the Preservation Coalition website will give you all kinds of information about projects, money, and the money that the communities have received things like that.
Okay, that's a good summary. Frank, you did
Yeah.
have something about the concern of the clerk regarding the ballot.
I just want to make sure that we're clear in what Lisa just said. The money that we raise through taxation, which is really it's 1% of basically 60% of a tax bill, provided people make more than what's minimally allowed under the plan, would go into our trust fund. And then the matching funds from the state are set annually at a percentage. So when I just don't want anyone coming back and saying, hey, wait a minute, you said we get 20,000. We may contribute 20,000 to the fund. It doesn't mean we're going to get 20,000. It all depends on what the payback rate the state assesses on those communal funds that are collected by the registry. But I think it would be very difficult to find a downside here, other than that somebody may not want to add $22 a year or $44 a year to their tax bill. The clerk has some concerns about when we vote this at an election, because after the town votes to accept the Community Preservation Act, we then have to present it to voters at a ballot.
Mhm.
We also have to, the following year, adopt a bylaw relative to the Community Preservation Act. So it's a process. It is recommended by the group that's most knowledgeable of this that you present it at statewide or national elections, because that's when you have the most voter participation and you really get a sense of what your community wants, as opposed to the annual election where you may get 10 or 15% of the voters. So Lisa has proposed to the board that we put this on the November election, and we're on track for that. But we've recently had some concern expressed by the town clerk, because due to the number of ballot questions that are going to appear on the November ballot, if we bring it forward in November, and that has nothing to do with what you vote tonight. If we bring it forward in November, it would require her to have two separate ballots for the election. So we have to work through that. But that's the second part of the process. The primary function right now is to identify what the community preservation project is, and to seek out support from the voters at town meeting, because that's where it starts. And then everything else follows.
All right, does the committee have any other questions for Lisa or Frank?
I do. I have some for Lisa.
Go ahead. Yep.
Lisa,
Mhm.
how soon do we get to receive money? Is it next November, or how long do we have to pay into it before we can receive money? And can we use it for
Right.
any?
So if we adopt it and start paying into it, next November of 2021, we receive distribution. But there's steps that we need to put in place. A Community Preservation Act committee needs to be formed. And then what they do is they identify projects which are submitted to the Community Preservation Coalition and the state. Then those projects are approved, and then the money is distributed starting next November.
Do we have any rough ideas of projects we might use this for?
Absolutely. We could use it for to upgrade the playground equipment. We could use it for repairs and upgrades to the town pool. You can use it for any of the athletic fields. You can use it for fencing, for seating. You can use it for in the town hall, for upgrades to the town hall. There's a lot of different projects. If the Council on Aging wanted to put in a pickleball court, they would be able to use those funds to fund that. And any improvements to our town park, the pathways, anything like that could be funded through the Community Preservation Act.
Thank you.
Kathleen?
I have a question about the committee. Would that be an elected committee or a committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen?
It would be appointed by a number of bodies.
Number of bodies.
Namely,
Could we be more specific, Frank?
Board of Selectmen appoints members. Lisa, I don't remember the structure.
Yeah, hold on one moment, Kathleen. I am just refreshing my information on that.
Okay.
Dave, while she's looking up that, you had a question?
Two questions. Based on current tax numbers, what does this annual value estimated to be?
When you say annual value, do you mean the burden to the taxpayer, or how much money will we?
How much money total will it take in?
cost the taxpayer.
Rick, did you distribute the information that I emailed to you today?
I did, but I mean, we didn't get it out till 5 o'clock, so I wouldn't expect the committee had any time to look at it.
Okay. I mean, there's basically, there's some charts in there that will answer that question because unfortunately I don't have access to it here at home. But in the information that Rick sent out, there is charts in there that will show what Whitman stands to collect and receive through this program that the coalition actually put together for us and emailed out to us. So that is included with the exact amount of what Whitman stands to benefit from the money from this. So far this year, they are anticipating an 11.2% return on money put into that for communities that contributed the 1%.
So
All right.
I think you answered two questions. One was, so my original question was how much, based on the calculations of this article, how much would the gross be of collection from the taxpayers on an annual basis estimated?
David, in order to calculate that, we have to run a calculation by taxpayer because many taxpayers will be exempt from this process due to income considerations. Others will have a significantly reduced impact because of the $100,000 exemption. I don't know that we have those numbers broken out by the town, but Lisa, I'm on your folder right now. What file are you referring to?
So in the CPA folder, there should be, sorry, it's.
Is it the local distribution?
Yeah, click on that.
Okay. Could that thing be any smaller?
Yeah, it is small.
Good Lord. Comparisons. Abington in 2019 generated $391,000 in revenue. I'm looking for similar towns to us. East Bridgewater isn't in here. Hanson generated $214,000. Another West Bridgewater, smaller than us, generated $194,000. So we're talking about a significant amount of money collected over the broad-based tax base. Certainly a couple of 100,000.
Okay, so if we were to say 300,000, just to throw a number out there,
Mhm.
and you're saying that the state will come back in the term, what was the term? The payback rate is 11%. Essentially, that's $33,000.
Right.
So basically, what this article is saying, and I'm putting this in the context of the warrant articles as a whole and the Article 2 as a whole, because I think it's unfair to characterize this article alone and just say, hey, it's only another $22 per month per household. So
No, Dave,
Not per
actually,
month,
that
per
would be
year.
$22 a year,
a year,
not a month, but a year.
fine, a year. So, but you got to take it as a whole. When we're asking the town for a feasibility study to construct a new middle school, and we're asking for a feasibility study to construct a new DPW building. So those are tax burdens not yet seen, realized yet, but are going to be coming down the pipeline if approved by town meeting. But my point is that where this article essentially is increasing people's taxes for the ability to get less than $50,000 back from the state. I don't see how that's a benefit. That's basically creating another fund to put something away, creating another committee in a town where we can barely get committees filled in this town.
So as far as increasing taxes, it does not increase property taxes. It takes 1% after the exemption of that. So, the amount of the amount of the surcharge or tax would be anywhere from $22 maybe to $78 based on what your property value is assessed at, and then minus the exemption. And that's per year, not per month. So it's a very, very small amount that we get. And again, the return difference from year to year based on the amount of money for real estate transactions that the registry contributes to the account. So it can differ. It can differ in a year, but it helps us pay for things. So, for instance, the DPW a few years back spent $80,000 upgrading the pathways in the town park as a result of a complaint made by someone who suffers from disabilities, of not being able to access. Had we had the Community Preservation Act, we could have used those funds to make those, basically to make those repairs and upgrades. So it's a very small amount of money, but it helps the town address those issues that we'd have to address anyway. But it just helped us put away a little bit, and we get money from the state, which normally if we're saving money for capital, we're not getting any money from the state to help us with that capital. That's all from taxpayer money. So this program opens up, like I said, in Whitman, the last couple of years, we have contributed over $50,000 worth of registry fees that go into this fund that we get zero from, absolutely zero, but yet we still contribute to the fund.
Those real estate fees that go in from Whitman, they don't come back to Whitman though. Those just go into the general fund.
They go into that fund, and we see nothing from that because we have not adopted this and we don't contribute to the fund.
But there's no guarantee that money that goes in from Whitman real estate taxes or fees down at the registry comes back to Whitman. It goes into the general fund and gets dispersed out to anybody.
It gets
No,
the
dispersed
towns.
out.
Actually, no, it doesn't. What happens is the money that's collected for the CPA goes into a separate fund
Mhm.
for the state. The state then determines collectively how much of that money is available to be distributed to the participating cities and towns. It's It doesn't go into the state's general fund. It's reserved funds. Kind of like highway money, only instead of hijacking half of it for operations, it all stays in that fund. And they distribute based on participation. The more communities that participate, the lower the total distribution is. For the first 11 years, they paid 100% to all communities. Now, a bunch of communities have jumped on the plan, so the percentage that we're seeing from the state has dropped, but it's still there. The primary source of revenue for this is the real estate surcharge that goes into our CPA trust fund, and then the money from the state gets added to that.
So I'm looking for the will of the committee on this. Chuck, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, just a little comment. Lisa has brought this up a few years ago, I think, Lisa, right? And
Yeah.
I know there were different members that were in support of it, and at that time, it wasn't the right time to bring it to the voters. I'm looking at your chart. It looks like a screenshot that you sent out today, Lisa, on a typical assessed home of 400,000 minus the exemption of 100,000. So, you know, it turns out to $49 per year. You know, it seems like we haven't got in yet, and there is money. There's money to be used. I think it's a good idea personally. I think we should have done it a while ago. The town clerk has some reservations about November. Well, what are we doing? We're kicking it down the road. I think it's a good program, and we have no trouble putting in COLAs to spend another $180,000 this year. So to put a little burden there, we can find a little bit money if we need to help support this somehow. But we put the money in, we're not getting anything back. Lisa, you've been working on this for a while. I think we should get it into November.
Okay, so some information was sent late this afternoon. Is there anybody that would like to get some more time to review the information that was sent, or is the committee ready to move this?
I just had a question, Rick.
Go ahead.
So this helps with capital, and we're going to have two different committees. Even how can we integrate these two committees into the overall capital expenditure? I mean, and how we'll be getting state money back for these projects? How will that work with our matrix? It seems like we're kind of doubling up. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, those details would be worked out once we adopt the program.
Okay.
And then we get, the assessors will come in, the treasure collector will work with the preservation coalition to help us set up the fund. Now, the Community Preservation Committee, that's required by the statute that we have this committee. And to answer Kathleen's question, the committee, it's created by our local legislative body. So a town meeting through the bylaw will create the committee. And then it does not say that these members are basically elected. So I'd have to look into that a little bit more. It does say, though, the committee is made up from a member of the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, Historical Commission, Housing Authority, and Board of Park Commissioners, but I guess that would be our DPW commissioner. So those folks there would be part of the committee, and then there would be one or two other folks who would join the committee as well to help with the projects.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
One more
Dave,
question. So
One more question.
if this 1% is not an increase to real estate taxes, then are we pulling away from, where is that 1% coming from? If it's not an increase, then
It is an increase. It's not a percentage increase on the tax. It's a surcharge on the tax. So it's if you go back to when the state used to have a 5% income tax and a 0.95% surcharge on the 5% income tax, that's kind of what this is. your tax bill is calculated, it's, let's say it's $290, and then 290,000, your tax bill based on that number is $4,600, and then you would add $45 to that.
So it's above and beyond what your tax bill is.
Yes.
I'd like to read over some of the stuff. I think there's a lot of questions, and, you know, I think this is a great idea. It's smart to move forward, but we have to look at the timing right now. So I want to read some things over and see what the overall benefit is before I vote.
Okay, personally, I agree with Chuck. I think that we have talked about this for a number of years, and I think Lisa has done an excellent job providing information, but if people want to have a little bit more time, I don't see that there's an urgency. We do have some time to go over this article, so. If it's the will of the committee to pass over this, we'll move on to the next article.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So that moves to Article 7. Frank, did the board vote to reaffirm or rescind their vote to their commitment to the statutory method at their meeting tonight?
Oh, you sure you want to hear this one?
I can only imagine. Go ahead, we're ready.
The board voted 3-2 to accept, subject to legal review, the amendment to the agreement to, I guess, share the burden on the assessment this year, and with the understanding and unambiguous verification that we are fully statutory next year. So the number that is being recommended or being supported by the board, it's already requested by the school committee, is $15,367,392 for line 175. And the board is supporting the amendment for the agreement method for fiscal '21 and the statutory method going beyond that.
The agreement method, Frank?
Agreement?
Or the
Agreement
50/50?
Amended agreement.
The modified, as they called it.
In other words, the modified
Okay.
proposal they have now would be the agreement method for fiscal '21, and then the statutory method would prevail from that point forward.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
amendment is an agreement method, Rick. It's just another agreement method. Instead of 60/40, it's we pay X.
So
Okay.
to clarify, it's almost $500,000 that we pay of Hanson's bills. And 3 selectmen voted to do that. Is that correct?
It's actually 200 and some odd thousand more than the assessment
Yes.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you do the math.
Yeah, how you do the math. It actually is, because that's only because the
that's
school.
because they're contributing Andy and
Yeah.
other expenditures.
But if we were to do statutory, at the amount that they have proposed, that they're handling, it's $500,000, a little more.
So, and if I may, so basically tonight, I see like a $375,000 spending swing. 211 paying for Hanson, and rightfully so, I understand the rationing behind the COLAs, but that swings another $165,000. So we just swing $370-ish thousand tonight.
Well,
basically.
Chuck, I think you have to realize that, you know, it is incumbent on the finance committee to make a recommendation in the town meeting. The Board of Selectmen have made several votes regarding this issue and changed their mind on several occasions. But I would suspect that this board, and I'm not going to pretend to speak for the board, but we voted unanimously last week to send a letter to the newspaper to show what the effects on anything other than voting the statutory method going forward. We saw a comprehensive explanation by Kathleen on how this has affected the economics of this town since 2007. And for it to perpetuate even another second is not something that I would advocate to the voters or the taxpayers of this town. So I think we are still in the listening phase, I think, was the message that I heard last week. This isn't the type of thing we want to be listening to. And I would expect much more from our elected selectmen than to make such a recommendation. Go ahead, Al.
Rick, who was the, or actually maybe directed to Frank. Frank, who were the selectmen that voted for it?
Dr. Kowalski, Randy Lamatina, and Justin Evans.
Thank you.
Is the board prepared to vote on this article now, or do you want to continue to be in the listening phase and see what comes out of the town of Hanson?
Let's listen.
I agree. Let's listen.
Okay.
Agreed. Listen.
Rick, as I understand it, the Finance Committee's position on this appropriation was the 15,156,235.
Well, the Finance Committee's recommendation from the beginning has been to accept nothing other than the statutory method, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We haven't voted on Article 2, any
Okay.
line items in Article 2. So I don't want to speak for the board until we bring up the line item from Article 2 for the assessment.
Yeah, I think we do have to listen. We haven't, I think it's hard to say somebody, another town can't afford something when they haven't even presented or had any finance committee meetings. When, you know, if they're thinking about hiring for police officers, and then, from what I understand, and then we go and pay this, I think we'd have a lot to answer for. If we're paying and they're hiring, I think we'd have a lot to answer for our community. I think there's a lot.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in now, or I'm sure we're going to have much more debate and discussion on this as we move forward. All right, thank you. Article, I think that does it.
That's it.
So the did go over the small typos that we found during our votes last week. So Frank has made corrections to the warrant for those little minor typographical issues. Does anybody else have anything they want to add on the warrant regarding our recommendations? All right, so I would expect that we will get a copy of Article 2 and we'll be able to start voting recommendations on that at our meeting on June the 9th. Does anybody have anything under new business? Just a matter of communication, we did get 2 memorandums just to say that the Board of Selectmen did vote the line item transfers for the 2 line item transfers that we approved last week as well. So that's it for communications.
And they did vote tonight.
Okay, and this committee did vote to recommend that line item transfer. I'll drop a copy off tomorrow.
Real fine.
Okay. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion, second it.
Okay. John,
Yes.
Al, Ralph,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you all for your participation.
Just so you know, you guys are keeping me up past my bedtime.
Thank you both for
Yeah,
joining us.
me
Thank you,
too.
John. And thank you, Samantha, for your work on our meeting.